too direct into this one, but we're on the Channel 3 mics as well. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be back. We might be working with a smaller group today, but we'll see, as folks trickle in with all the traffic. Great to see everyone, and we haven't actually gotten with our committee in a while. We obviously had our 3 community meetings, and I think they went very well, and we've got a lot of great input. So tonight, kind of, your agenda's in front of you, but basically, Hank is going to go over sort of a consolidated what that community input was. What did we hear from these folks? Concerns, positives, any concerns, that sort of thing. And then, we're going to have our discussion and just let everyone talk and get everything out there and discuss ideas and any responses. And we do have kind of some potential adjustments as well. And then, so we'll go over that. There's a handout for adjustments, and we'll review that. Also, our principals are on hand, too, to answer any questions. And, of course, MNPS staff, Dr. Register here at the table with us. So definitely want to recognize Dr. Register, Peter Westerholm, council members here. I saw school board member Jill Spearing here. Any other elected officials? I think that's it. Glad to have you guys as well. And we may see some more folks trickle in, like I said. So, Hank, if you want to kind of take it from here, review the community input. And a lot of you guys were at the meetings and really appreciate everyone's time and coming out at the Stratford East and Bailey meeting. So I'll let you kind of go over that.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilman, very much. And thanks, first of all, to all of y'all. I know this has been a lot of work. We've taken it very seriously, what y'all shared with us, and I know that y'all taken it very seriously, and I hope that you can see that reflected in things. I'm excited about tonight. Just to remind everybody of where we've come from, we started meeting back in November. You guys started meeting back in November, had several meetings, had the snow time, and then had 3 community meetings to get input from the community based on y'all's draft recommendations. Here, we'll pass out a handout. You good, Jay? That does 2 things. One, it captures in some broad buckets the input that you all and we have heard from the community. And so I'm going to run through those. And then some ideas about how to incorporate that input into y'all's recommendations. And of course, these are just ideas and wanted to give y'all something to be able to respond back to. So the first bucket of things that we heard about is having 2 locations for East Nashville Magnet School is inconvenient. We heard from parents, particularly at the second meeting, the East meeting, that they enjoy the convenience of being able to drop off their 5th through 12th graders at one school. Of course, if y'all went forward with the pathway recommendation, they would gain that convenience here at Stratford. But we thought, that's really reasonable. And so one way to address that would be to have a yellow school bus shuttle between the 2 and work with MTA. And then the input B is it's really important for the East Nashville community to have as many opportunities as possible to exercise that choice to go into East Nashville Magnet School. And so Chris Weber actually had done an analysis of the waiting list, and most people are from East Nashville. And so expanding that would have more seats available to East Nashville people. You also would have the increased option of the pathway from Warner to go into there. And so that would be a guaranteed pathway as well. Going down to input C, the desire for East Nashville Magnet Schools to remain the same size or retain what works. We heard from that group again at that second meeting pretty loudly that they like what's happening there, and that's great. And that's part of the goal is to increase what works and increase the seats there. And so through, y'all might urge us to make sure that we're not letting in too many students at one time into that. Then we heard very loudly, Julie has represented this on the committee very well, and we've heard it both at the Stratford meeting and the third meeting at Bailey, how important it is to maintain the culture of what's working well at Bailey if it were to move here at Stratford. And then input E, concern, we heard this probably mostly at the first meeting here at Stratford, but then again the third at Bailey, concern of having young fifth graders on the same campus as 12th graders. And Dr. Steele can speak more to that, but when you came in, that wing off to the left is where they would have that. So they would be really in a completely separate side of the building, similar to how they're in separate buildings on the same campus at East Nashville Magnet. And so he can talk more about that as well. Now I think Councilman Davis wants to open it up more to you guys to hear what else you heard from the meeting.
Yeah, you know, I had asked them to, obviously with some of the concerns we had, we wanted to like, okay, let's hear, you know, some responses and sort of productive ideas that you may have, you know, obviously being the experts and the day job folks that work with the schools and everything. So, so they put this together and, yeah, I mean, I think this is the time just to kind of open up dialogue, discussion. Obviously, the pathway discussion is the bigger one, but I'm open to any recommendation discussion. I think we can dive deep into everything. So I'm just want to have a productive dialogue and get your thoughts. I'll open it up. Sure, Amy.
Let's think about East C. Actually, B, more East Nashville students. I'm not sure how it works. Is it not the same as like Lockland and other schools where they go from the GPZ first?
Why don't we get
And can we change that?
Yeah, Chris, come on up to the table.
Yeah, you just hang at the table with us because there might be a lot of like numbers and pathway conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, is there a possibility of feeding from East Nashville first and then opening up remaining spots?
You all can hear me fine, but, so East, the current East is not like Lockland. Yes, they do both have a geographic priority zone. However, at Lockland, it's 100%. Actually, Lockland was originally a zone school back before it was converted into a magnet school, and then that zone was essentially converted to first preference, and then it was expanded a little bit bigger as well. But East has been a magnet school for a long time, and that geographic preference area is actually reserves 30% of the seats from that area, and then 70% of the seats countywide.
So can we not change that?
I'm not saying that you can't change that. That's not my place to say. But what I would say is that by providing Warner a guaranteed pathway, you are increasing the number of seats. And the 30% seats, when you expand the capacity, you're automatically doubling the number of seats that have preference into that.
But you're doubling for everybody, not just
And
East
the
Nashville.
geographic priority zone doesn't encompass all of East Nashville. It's a smaller kind of area. So when you start to exclude, like right now at Lockland kind of has some challenges because the only people getting into Lockland come from only that certain area.
Right.
And so there's like this thing. So like the more you just isolate where the kids come from, the less accessibility other people in East Nashville have too.
Right.
Amy, one of the question I asked Chris was the intent was to find out, so who's applying and who's on the waiting list now, and and the idea was to find out if we actually need to change it. Yeah, we can change it, but the 30% thing is something that we use in other places where we have a geographic priority zone, and when we look at that, you're reserving 30%, and the great majority of the people on the waiting list are also from East Nashville anyway. It gives you expanded capacity there. So I would say, and the thing about it is you can change it every year. And that's not the way to do it. You don't want to flip back and forth, but once you start growing the capacity, if you need, and you see more and more applications from outside, and a lot of people in East Nashville are not getting a seat there, then you can change it from 30 to 50 or 30 to 40. And we've considered that in some other cases. We just haven't had to do it.
Okay.
Just to, yeah, the 30%, it's a really tight radius, you said, right?
I wouldn't say tight. Is there a map somewhere over here? So, I mean, I'm totally going from memory. And
I guess where I'm going is, does it go into Lockland? Because my thought is, if the 30% is tight, like that neighborhood, you know.
It's if you imagine the size of the Lockland Geographic Priority Zone, it's about the same area, about the same, but there's a little shift because the southern part that's in Lockland, it actually shifts up into the west. So the southern part of Lockland, I don't believe, is actually in the East GPZ, but the East GPZ pushes just a little bit northwest. So it's just slightly different, but it's about the same size.
Yeah, what I'm kind of just now putting together is, yes, okay, we have this 30% in that tight radius. Some of the Lockland guarantees are in there, some of them maybe not. If all the Lockland kids jumped in, there'd be more East kids there, East Nashville kids. And as soon as Warner jumps in, there should be a lot more East Nashville kids, right? Or are all the Warner zones in the GPZ already anyway? Or
no, because I think they're zoned for another.
They're they're a little out of the radius was what I was thinking. So we're adding a bunch of East Nashville kids.
Yeah, so let me approach it a different way. So you could, if you increased the GPZ, you could use up a much higher percentage of the seats just at Lockland and Warner, and that would leave people out from, say, Englewood or Tom Joy or Dan Mills who wanted to go. And it's probably an unnecessary move based on the data we've seen, because really the people who want to go to East are coming from this general geographic area anyway.
Well, what I definitely heard at the meeting was they kind of lived like walking distance, these folks, right? And so those would be the people getting in on that 30%, and the Warner kids are going to get in too. So our numbers are going to grow, is what I'm thinking, pretty significantly once the Warner kids start jumping into East if they choose to, unless I'm misunderstanding.
So let me address y'all tell me to shut up if I'm talking too much. So let me address I mean that. Don't say shut up, but say okay.
We've heard enough out of you, sir. Yeah, thank you.
I'm tired. But, I forgot he's recording that.
Yeah, it's all right. We'll be on the newsletter.
So the other part of that is the concern we heard at East. And we heard East parents who were concerned because they didn't want to mess up a good thing. Let's just call it like it is. So the other part of that is controlling the growth there. And so we would not anticipate filling the buildings up. We would anticipate a planned growth. And that would involve our principals, and that would involve Chris. And I'm going to tell you, Chris looks young, but he's an expert at this, and he can really do good projections. He's done a lot of this work for a long time, and we can really make constructive decisions that don't hurt schools. And that's what we would propose to do for East. Last thing we want to do is mess up what we think is a good thing at East. And I think we can control that growth. And that would come with consultation with our principals and how we grow that, how many seats we open up. Do we open up all grade levels? Do we open up 5th and 9th? Just how that growth comes is something that we can plan and control.
Okay, so I have a quick question, which I'm just wondering, how is according to just the idea of moving east of the transition for East and Bailey, how is that really going to improve the pathway that's already in existence? Because, I mean, I got a report from Chris today, and only 18 students are using the pathway from Lockland to East. I understand opening it up to other students, but what about the current students who aren't using it? They're heading to Lytton at like 20 out of the 59 or so. Is there going to be any recommendation for helping parents who go to Lockland who aren't using the pathway? Because they clearly are not, and we'll just be opening it up for people who it's not because I'm on the current pathway but I can't get in kind of idea. It's I'm on the waiting list and I can't get in. And that doesn't help the parents who are already on that pathway who aren't choosing the pathway. I'm trying to figure out how this transition is going to, how is it really going to help the parents who are already on the pathway, who chose Lockland and they want to continue on the East pathway. Moving it to the new building is not going to.
Some of the things, Mr. Ball, if you want to speak to it, but I've heard him speak to like the programmatic benefits of East, and so like by expanding the size, there's more offerings and you can do more with the school. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to speak. I've heard you talk about.
So why don't both of y'all come up to the table and just talk about what you see program-wise and how what you see happening if we grow the capacity there.
And how are you going to present it to the parents that are already in this pathway, like parents at Lockland who are not using the pathway?
And they're making different choices, is what you're saying?
They are making
it's
different
almost
choices.
like you're talking about a sort of a marketing problem. Hey, they're
Or-
choosing to go to Lytton or something instead of
they're
kind of
just choosing
staying.
another.
Speaking as a parent of a current student at Lockland, as a fourth grader, a lot of it is the culture. Beginning of it was a huge, like, Lockland kind of band together when Lockland first opened. So
Sure.
when they had the direct pathway to East, everyone moved and it was like a family type of deal. And now it's kind of divided and it's a lot of personal kind of like issues with it. The biggest thing that occurred when we had an open discussion about it was the IEPs and then the parent involvement in the school were like some of the concerns. But those people who had concerns they did not have another child at the school, so they kind of had prior experiences, so it was just kind of a touchy subject. But it didn't seem like the program was the issue. It was just the culture, or when they went for a tour, they wasn't really satisfied.
Yeah, I think what happened a year or so ago was that there were some parents who inquired about their child going to Lytton instead of East, and you're exactly right. I think a couple of them made the switch, and then it was kind of like, well, you're going to Lytton, well, then we're going to go to Lytton, and it became kind of like a thing. And what we found was a lot of the people that made that decision had never even been in our building and didn't really even know what we did. And so this year we've almost tripled the number of tours and things that we've done, and we've actually had more of the fourth grade from Lockland come over and tour the building and see what's going on in the middle school. I don't want to step on Mr. Burnett, but that's one of the things we've been really pleased with is the number of folks from this year's fourth grade class that are going to East. So I think it's just, you know, one of the characteristics of the families in Lockland is they're very tight-knit, and they play together and they do things together, and so the kids develop bonds. And so when your best friend goes to one school, you tend to want to go with them. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's one of the really neat things about Nashville is that people have choices to do those things. So, but I think one of the things we really fought was, you know, I don't want my kid to go to East, but I've never even been in the building. So we were trying to combat that by saying, come and see the school, come and see what we're doing, and then if you don't think it fits you, then that's fine. At least you've given us a chance to show you how we do things. But
So if I were, I'll be personal with this, my kids are, you know, my grandkids are at the age to go to high school now, and I got one in college. But if I had my kids going back through, the Paideia program is a choice I would make. It is a terrific program. It's a great program. And when we look at the neighborhoods, I think Steve's exactly right. But there's a possibility when you add Warner to an automatic pathway, there's a possibility for taking a good section of that part of town and doing one thing that I've heard Chris Moth talk about, and that's build a K-12 pathway. And Paideia is terrific with K-12. When you start young kids in seminar, and that approach to education is powerful. And I think, so what we have to do is a good job of marketing, and that's sort of a bad word in a way, but talking to parents and letting them know what we have, and just having an open door all the time.
Yeah, I don't mind saying sales and marketing. You know, it's like I think we've all learned from the charters knocking on the doors and that sort of thing. Like, we've got to, you know, you got to increase your tours. We've got at Stratford to talk about this amazing building and this Vanderbilt, you know, STEM and everything. And we've got to do that. We understand we have to. We got a product.
I think we need to learn how to market, because we market schools as focus specific. And I interviewed about 8 parents who came from Lockland and came to Lytton And I mean, there were several concerns. There was the proximity to the high school. There was culture. There was just the just the change that you go through when you're going from middle school to high school, or from elementary school to middle school. There were a lot of things that happened, and a couple of folks did go because a friend went. But most of those folks that I talked to did go and toured the school and walked through it. And I think the other thing, when we were talking about increasing capacity, what I heard at that East meeting was that people in East Nashville want to have access to their own high school. And I think we keep talking about, this comes down to neighborhood schools. It comes down to us being able to have access to the school in our neighborhood so that we can participate and be involved in that. And I think it was said at the meeting at East that with, how many schools feed into East?
42.
Okay, so the example was given that Stratford, that it was difficult with all the things happening at Stratford, all the community gathering around with tailgating and all this kind of thing, how that was impossible at East. You got 42 schools feeding into that school. Of course it's impossible. If you had everybody in that area was feeding right into that school, and a Padea program is a liberal arts program, right? Is that, am I correct? So it's a pretty broad, it's a general, it's a well-rounded education kind of study, right? Okay, so, and it seems like the folks, and I've talked to a lot of folks in the last couple of months, I know we all have, and I'm gonna tell you, what everybody wants is a well-rounded education. We keep talking STEM, we talk Padea, we talk all this stuff, but we only market these schools as a Padea school or as a STEM school. And I think that instead of us focusing on those elements, that they need to be pieces of the puzzle. Not the whole shebang. And I want my kid to walk out of a test lab for engineering and right into an arts humanities class. I want them to have a broad spectrum. Is that the right word? I want them to have a lot of knowledge about a lot of different things, and I don't want to feel like when they're going through high school that it's vocational training, or that I'm having to push them in the 5th grade to start thinking about what they want to be. Because I can tell you, I didn't have a clue what I wanted to be in my sophomore year of college.
Sure.
After I mean, I just didn't know, and I get pushing kids to achieve, and I'm probably going on a rant here, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. We're here to chat.
I get pushing kids to achieve, and I appreciate the STEM program, and I think I can tell you one of the conversations that I heard about was a woman who Stratford graduate, who wanted to send their kids, really wanted to support the neighborhood school, but her daughter wanted to be a veterinarian, and they were like, you can't send our kid to Stratford because that's a STEM school. Obviously, we've not done a real good job of marketing what the science and what all these elements are. This is a broad scope that this covers, right? But it's not the only thing. Engineering covers a lot of ground. Studio engineering, computer programming, a lot of ground.
And bottom line, all these schools, we want everyone to understand they're college preparatory schools. I mean, we want,
have a common core curriculum.
Yeah. We need to make sure that everyone understands that.
The academic core curriculum is the same regardless of the pathway, or regardless of the academy.
Right.
You just have themes that you can choose. And the other thing I'd say, John, is that there is nothing in this plan that eliminates neighborhood schools. Nothing.
Well,
but now if you look at the neighborhood schools of choice, they're filling up really quickly, and so you're getting full, so they can't continue to grow without doing something else to add more high quality programs in schools and seats in schools.
So we expand programs.
And so how do we, do we build bigger schools? Do we add on to the schools?
We're talking about filling the capacity at Stratford. And if we expanded the programming here at Stratford, I can tell you that when the rally at Stratford started 2 years ago, it wasn't because it was a STEM school. It was because it was our neighborhood high school. That's why people started going here, or that's why people in elementary level committed to going to Stratford. Not because it was a STEM school, but because it was right here in the neighborhood. And I feel like as a district, we spend more time convincing people that they can get a better education by leaving and going somewhere else than we do encouraging them to walk across the street to their own school and get involved. And I feel like that is just, It's part of the culture that we have created in creating all of the focus stuff. And again, I'm not opposed to the focus stuff as long as it's a piece of the puzzle and not the whole puzzle.
Sure.
I want to piggyback on that just slightly. After the Bailey meeting, I had a parent come up and ask, what is a STEM pathway? Is that different than any other kind of pathway? And so I think we need to, and it actually goes to your speech from this morning too, when you talked about the low expectations come from a perspective of compassion, and
Did that strike a note?
it did, because for the longest time, when I heard low expectations, it was a completely different thing until that was explained to me more fully by Dr. No, the one behind you. Thank you, Dr. Steele. About how teachers approach their children, their students, more as children, less as students, especially on the elementary level. And that, to me, that's not the same thing as low expectations. But my larger point is the language we use. If I've got somebody coming and saying, what's a STEM pathway, which to me sounds kind of obvious. It's a pathway of STEM schools in my brain, but that's not the case for everybody else. And so when you get people who are saying, I want my kid to be a veterinarian, and they don't see how that fits into a STEM program, or the low expectations alluding to things, I think a lot of what we do, we need to reevaluate the words we use. Choice. Our lottery doesn't give us choice, it gives us the opportunity of choice. Because if I choose to go to this school and the lottery doesn't agree, I didn't get a choice. But I got the opportunity to make a choice. So some of this is language and marketing, and some of it, I think a lot of it actually is language as it relates to who we are. Stratford, MNPS, neighborhood schools, to express that to people who aren't digging into this every day. Right. To the folks who aren't on Facebook and Twitter and aren't utilizing the fabulous chat on the MNPS website. There are a lot of people out there that don't have access, don't know, don't understand, don't have time, and it needs to be simpler in a lot
Go
of ways.
ahead. Now, I'm just going to put this out there because I have to. Have we even considered just going back to our zone school? If we give parents enough time, hey, listen, you got to 2016, 17, 2017, 18. Now, the choices are there, but we encourage you to go back to your zone school. Now, if you find a legitimate reason why your zone school is not working for you, you can make a choice to go to another place.
I think that we need
And on that application, please tell me your legitimate reason, and maybe we can have some sort of conversation with you about why you are not choosing your zone school. But to encourage that, hey, you have choice, and let's go to all these other places, and not, because I can be honest, I moved here, and my child is not going to her zone school because she doesn't know anybody there, and our whole neighborhood is not going there. And the school that our neighborhood does go to has no openings for her, so she had to choose.
That's the problem.
That's
the problem.
And there's no way.
So we need to deal we need to make a difference for that problem.
And in
for
that
many
case, it would be,
people.
well, we need to move Lockland to another building because that's where everybody wants to go. And that's where the waiting list is. So they need to
That
go
was kind of brought up at the
to
Bailey
another building.
Someone,
A lot
a
of options
parent.
want to go back to zone.
Yeah, a lot of it had mentioned. Yeah.
And I think that would, and I'm not saying I love Warner, and it's a great, Mrs. Fleming did a great job at getting me there, and I'm like 2 minutes away,
But if we encourage people to go to their zone, we can let people
Just
know
the
that the choice
consideration.
is out there. The option is there if you want to go someplace else, but we want to encourage you to do this. And we put all of our frontline marketing into the zone schools, the neighborhood schools, where it's like we've taken the most natural piece of the puzzle and we've made it the most difficult to obtain.
And
One thing, I don't know if any of you have seen me do a presentation at the school choice fair or anything else where I just talk to the general public about the school choice process. But if you have, the very first slides that I talk about is I talk about your zone school. And I talk about your zone school is an option for you. And in fact, many of these schools on the application are zone schools. And that if you haven't already considered your zone school, you need to do that. And then I follow that slide by another slide that talks about expectations and community opinions, and it says if you follow your neighbor's advice, you're going to find the perfect fit for your neighbor's child, but not yours. And then we encourage people to go visit the schools first and go visit their own school. So
But I think that's
I mean
the truth.
that's
They are making decisions based on
Yeah,
their neighbors.
they're-
They're making decisions based on who go. Like for example, my daughter, if she left something at school, there is nobody around. I mean, to say, hey, knock on the next door neighbor's door and say, do you have the homework sheet from yesterday? There's no option for that because.
But I could say that happens a lot.
And I mean, and it's not just, there's 10 people, like 10 different schools on our street. And, to add Explore, now we have, 11 different, and what I'm saying is, has it been considered? I know that the transition, I think moving the school still may be an option, transitioning, but I think to encourage, we'll have a lot more diversity. We'll be able to somehow integrate some academic levels as well. Because when you put all of one academic level together in one school, because all of those parents, band together and decide to go to one school, what do we have? We have green schools and red schools.
the other point, if you don't mind me to interject just a little bit, is history. I mean, you all have lived here a long time. Look at what Lockland wasn't always what Lockland was. Look at Dan Mills, and look at Lytton now. It's like these schools take time to change that reputation and the public's perception. Things don't happen overnight, and there is no silver bullet that just automatically fixes things. It's a matter of time and recruiting and public perceptions. And so just kind of keep that in the mix. To think that you just create the culture of a Lockland and you just move it, or we'll just replicate a Lockland. It's not just the GPZ, it's not just the whatever, it's all the history that has built Lockland into what it is now, and Dan Mills and everything else too.
I mean, I would say that's exactly what we have been contending with for years, and especially since this rally at Stratford happened. Stratford had 20 years of perception, and we know that. Lytton was on the closed list, and we know that. East wasn't it closed? It wasn't even open for a while. I mean, I know if we start, and so East Nashville has a perception issue. I mean, we have a stigma. If we started closing every school around here that had a stigma or perception issue, we wouldn't be educating kids. So I think you're kind of making my point for me is that it takes time, and we're talking about closing Bailey and giving it to another school, and it takes time. And we gave Lytton that time, and we should give Bailey that time. And I'll also jump on and say, I have had, and I kid you not, 200 conversations about 5th grade at Stratford, and it is not flying in this neighborhood. And the people that I've talked to who we had committed at the elementary level have flat out said, if it happens, I'm out. We will start lottering for something else. So I think that we need to look at the piece of the puzzle that we have built for the last 2 or 3 years to lock these folks in and make sure that we are giving people what they want, because when people started buying into this, to Stratford and this whole neighborhood thing at the elementary level, it was with the understanding that if we lock in now and we get involved now, then by the time my kids get there, it'll be what we need it to be. And what we don't need are roadblocks thrown in the way or the rug pulled out from under us. And you cannot give me enough guarantees to put a 5th grader in a high school. Even in my little town of 2,000 people in South Texas, we've got 3 separate high schools to keep those kids separate. I got enough stuff going on with a 5th grader at home. I got enough. And you may say it's not my kid, but part of this neighborhood thing is that it's not just about my kid, it's about all of our kids.
Have we considered maybe mirroring?
I was not dogging you. I'm not dogging you. I hope you know that.
Using a mirror approach, maybe not a 5th, maybe, and I'm gonna say this because somebody's probably gonna say no, that doesn't work. But putting 712 Stratford, 712 East, and maybe doing 5-6 at Bailey and 5-6 at East Middle, not technically moving them, that would open up some space. It would put some students at the high school, leave some students at the middle school, and offer, because I'm gonna have a 5th grader this upcoming year, and I would be nervous about her being at a high school. Because I'm an educator, she kind of knows what it feels like to be, in a building with older students. But I would like, because of everything that's going on with her, from psychologically to physically, academically, I would like to see her in a smaller setting with teachers who understand 5th and 6th graders, who understand that concept of, it's just like having a pre-K center. Those people understand what it means to cultivate a 3 and 4 year old. I think that's the same concept with cultivating an 11 or 12 year old who's really changing, and not maybe forcing them into a more adult-like atmosphere so quickly. Like, let's think of other options besides just.
So I have a question of Mr. Steele then, because what I'm hearing is just like, how do you ensure that the middle school remains pure under Stratford's roof? So can you speak to that? I didn't go to any of the meetings.
Make sure it's pure?
Yes, the middle school.
The separation,
yes.
kind of a middle and high, when it's together.
I hear what John's saying, and I can't argue. I don't have a counterpoint to what John's saying. I hear what he's saying. Mm-hmm. I get it. I've seen it work in many places. I have so much more faith in our high school kids. The school, Stratford, is turned around. It's not on its way, it is turned around. You throw in the poverty rate at Stratford, the mobility rate at Stratford, if there was a magic pill for that, this school would be easily a green school with people wanting to come here every day. When you throw in poverty and 87% poverty and 56% mobility rate, there are people out there that it wouldn't matter if we had a 30 on average on the ACT, they just would not want to send their kids to this school with those children. Bailey faces the same problem. So let's get to the brass tacks of it. We have people in this neighborhood that just don't want to send their kids to Stratford because there are a lot of poor kids that go to Stratford.
Yeah.
Michael, what's your enrollment this year compared to last year?
We're a little up. Last year, I think it was 660, something like that last year, and we're up to like 670 right now. But we're doing tours like Steve. We're doing tours every single day. We've had several kids from the charter schools enroll here, and so the word is out. We just had 17 kids get a 21 or better on the ACT, and our projection was 1. So we, $5 million in scholarship money last year. So the school is turned around. But if you want to get to the truth of the matter is the reason there's 680 kids in the school and not 1,200 is because there's 400 kids out there that are going to schools like Innsworth and other schools because they're athletes and they get the opportunity to go there. And, I've had 3 conversations today with prospective athletes who want me to tell them why this school is better than a school over near a private school somewhere else is why I should choose this school over those schools. And they just don't want to be at school. Some people just don't want to be at schools with kids that are poor. So I can't argue against you, John. I was over there trying, but I'm saying he's making some really good points.
Let me say, I don't mean to cut you off.
Well, let me finish real quick.
Okay.
To answer your question, we have a plan in place. If you guys move forward with this, if the board approves it, we have a plan in place that I'm very comfortable with. I think Christian is comfortable with it. Of making sure, of course, you got to realize that if the middle school moves over here, their staff is going to move over here. They're going to have their campus supervisors over here, their counselors, their budget. Everything's going to be we're going to have to figure all that out. And we got a year to figure all that out. So there's going to be a lot of supervision in the building. The design right now, as it is perceived, is that the wing over there will be the middle school wing. So you'll really have a great opportunity to separate middle schoolers from high schoolers. But the truth of the matter is you'll have 5th graders on the same campus with 12th graders, and that just doesn't seem to sit well. But one counterpoint to John's comments, I've talked to, I don't know if 200, but every parent that I've talked to, including people at this table right here, are kind of excited about this. I'm kind of excited about the possibility of this transition. We're excited about it. We're looking forward to the new mission and to the new challenges, and we're looking forward to prepping for the whole year. So I've talked to a whole lot of people too, and I want to remind this board real quick that the number of people that come to the meetings with concerns, that's a great thing, but there are a vast number of people that don't come to y'all's meetings because they are excited about this possibility, this transitioning the middle school into Stratford. So, I know it's a tough choice, but I hope that answers your question. We're excited about it, and we think it can work.
So the change, the problems, the change, and the unknown about that, and putting 5th graders on a high school campus. But in terms of, as a longtime educator who's had this organization in other places, there's some really positive things that can be done with the program, a lot of them. And that's one thing we're looking at for Bailey and Stratford. For East, it's just a matter of increasing capacity for a program that's already in demand. I want to say one thing and make a point about the neighborhood schools, though. Neighborhood schools are primarily elementary schools, and we're not talking about changing any elementary zones. When you look at the pathways, we're talking about middle schools and high schools, and this school would still be a neighborhood high school. It still has a zone. Hopefully, we can begin attracting some students here. But remember, in East Nashville, elementary zones are pretty small. They're geographically tight, and there's no change. There's no change in that. Kirkpatrick's got an elementary zone. It's the same. Laughlin doesn't have a zone. That's the one school, but Englewood has a zone. The problem with Englewood is too many people have left. And we don't want to do anything but strengthen Englewood. And we've done that. We've done that with leadership and with teachers and with support systems, and it'll kick in. And hopefully we'll attract people to that neighborhood school. That's the basic plan. But then what happens after elementary school? And how do we take the children from Englewood and make their parents feel good about where they're going next, and hopefully to give them some choice. But, my guess is 90% of the kids at Englewood will choose to go to Stratford. Bailey is a red school. Now, I'm going to throw this out. If Bailey stays the way it is now, the enrollment's going down because Kirkpatrick is going to take kids to KIPP. Kirkpatrick's a big feeder to Bailey. If the school stays red, the Achievement School District will take Bailey. It will not be our choice. And so what I'm saying to you is we've got to develop some strategies for change that are going to make a difference in those red schools quicker. And I don't, I am the last person to want to harm neighborhood schools. I think we need to build them up. A couple of years ago, I heard in other zones where Chris Moss is over here, we need to start promoting our neighborhood schools and our zone schools. Absolutely. And what we've said is, and I don't know if people hear us or not, we want your zone school to be your first choice. But if that's not okay, then we need to give you some other options. But we need most all of our elementary children to go to the zone schools. But I want all of them to go to Englewood, or I want 75% of them to go to Englewood, not 30% of them.
But I don't think that we push our zone schools nearly as hard as we push the other opportunity. And I don't know, I don't know who, I mean, I'm sure that you're talking to a lot of people. I'm telling you, I have talked to a lot of people.
But let me, I want to really push my point here. We're not talking about changing one thing about Englewood's zone. We're not talking about making it an open enrollment school or a choice school or anything else. All of the elementary schools in this district, all of East Nashville, Tom Joy, Maplewood, and Stratford clusters will remain the same. They will remain neighborhood schools. We're talking about looking at pathways at the middle school and high school level to strengthen the program and to build enrollment.
I get that, but a couple of years ago when we rallied at the school board meeting and we brought all of these folks out because Stratford ended up on the list and we were afraid that it was going to be closed for under enrollment, we were told at that board meeting there is no plan on the table, there is nothing with none of the Stratford schools are in trouble, we're not looking at anything. The very next year Ross disappeared and went to pre-K and nobody said a word because it went to pre-K. And then they came after Englewood, and the tide was too high, so they took Kirkpatrick instead. And now we're coming after Bailey. So we're pulling everything that feeds into Stratford. We're pulling away, and then we wonder why the numbers are declining here. Or it could also be that people have a perception with what a STEM school is, or that maybe we need to expand what we're offering here. I'd like to point out that the one STEM school in the middle school, high school conversation is Lytton, and it's growing by leaps and bounds, and it's the only school that doesn't have STEM in the title, and that was by choice. So people are choosing that school thinking that it's a neighborhood school, and it is a neighborhood school, and they have the STEM program, but there are so many other things going. But what the concern at Lytton was that you would have a preconceived notion of what this school means if your kid came here and we call it a STEM school.
Yeah, I mean, I'm committed to Stratford because we're at Dan Mills. We're committed to, we're already planning on it. However, the STEM part of Stratford scares me because I want her to go to a well-rounded school like I went to, with AP English and AP, U.S. history.
AP English?
Yeah.
You have music program?
We have music band, we have art, we have Spanish, we have AP courses, we have dual enrollment courses. You might be somewhat accurate in the marketing of that, but I want this community to know we've spent thousands of dollars over the last 5 years on marketing. And also I want to point out to you that this academy, which started out as the only STEM academy in the building, their ACT average is a 21 or better right now. So, sometimes you got to be careful what you wish for because we are pushing a rigorous program here to try to increase the academic rigor here. So, I agree with you. I think this school is a well-rounded school. I think you can pick up things. For instance, if you're in criminal justice but you really have a desire to be in engineering, then we find a way to give that engineering class as an elective to you. So you're not just put into engineering and that's all you think about all day is engineering. And I don't know how to market that any better than we already have, but the experts are over here. But you can pick up other disciplines here if you so choose as part of your elective process. But I want to make a point too, because the relationships that we've worked so hard to build with elementary parents down there tailgating and all these different events that we've had so much fun doing. They're talking, well, they're out. They're out if we bring in fifth graders to be with high schoolers. I don't even know where that comes from because that we're talking about.
I'm not saying that everybody's saying we're going to bail. I'm saying that I've talked to a lot of parents, and I've certainly had a couple that said, we're not doing that if it's fifth. I'm not saying that Englewood is bailing on your school.
I'm sorry. That's what I thought I heard.
Don't take that. That's there's nothing veiled there at all. The community is going to support the school because it's the community school. It's our neighborhood school. What they want is to know from the beginning that they're a part of that, and I think that Stratford is doing a fine job. I think that the STEM program is doing great, and we as a community help market this school. I mean, it's word of mouth, and it's the parents that are going to build the school along with you and the staff and the kids. And we're working with kids at nonprofits outside of the school. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. We're not dissing Stratford at all. I'm saying that there are certainly concerns and maybe even more more than just concern about putting 5th grade at this school.
I'm not sure if that's any different than the concerns that some parents have at putting, whether they say it's a separate building, it doesn't look like a separate building from the outside. It looks like one big campus.
They're all hanging out at East.
And some of those folks who came.
So it's the same concept as.
Right.
Different lunches,
Well,
different everything.
I can
Are
just
there
tell-
any other
I can just
buildings
tell
where
you real
you
quick.
could put a new middle?
I had 50 visitors today, ex-educators, all senior citizens. Had several visitors come from Oklahoma, I think it was, a couple of days ago. Their comments were they're blown away by what's happening in Stratford, which makes me think that, well, they must, because they're starting out academies in Oklahoma, Omaha, I think, or is it Omaha, Nebraska, I think, right, Jay? Omaha, Nebraska. So these comments come every time somebody comes to our door. This is a nationally recognized academy now, national accreditation. In about 2 or 3 weeks, I'm very positive NSST will also earn that national recognition. You're always going to have parents who are just kind of not too thrilled about their 5th grader being with high schoolers. That's just normal. But I think that once it's in place, with the level of educators that are going to be transitioning that, I think they're going to be blown away by the success of it. I think this will be a national model probably within 2 years. And I think that you'll see a huge difference in the entire climate of the building because I have total faith in our high schoolers. You know, we know the ones that we keep a closer eye on that need more attention than the other ones. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. I know how Bailey is protective of their students. I have no doubt about that. Them coming over and making sure their kids. Me making sure those kids aren't with 12th graders, and those guys making sure those kids aren't with 12th graders. I just don't. I understand that there's some apprehension, but I don't really see a problem with it happening because Christian has talked about a national model, I think in Ohio, that's been hugely successful. And I used to be the assistant principal of a K-12 school, and it's really kind of a awesome thing.
Because you could still provide a whole child approach. And I
Oh.
think that's one of the things that probably needs to come out because your concerns about 5th grade here, but I also hear you saying that, you know, what else do you offer? And so Mike is saying that we can offer whole child, you know, just more conversations and more prep in the next year would have to occur so everyone can
And
understand. the middle
tomorrow, one of my assistant principals and I are visiting Overton to get a tour of their Cambridge program, try and talk to Dr. Steele and Dr. Register about Cambridge here at Stratford, because I think we're probably almost ready for that, you know. And so I think that as far as the diversity of offerings in the whole child approach, I think we have that, and I think we're open to anything that is feasible with budgeting and with and personnel and those kind of things. We're open to other suggestions as well as far as to make this a more well-rounded school.
Steve's going to say something, but I want to say something about middle school and our strategic plan. And one of the key components of our strategic plan is to engage every middle school student in something beyond academics that's a passion. We got the capacity to do that in Nashville. We've got it because of Music Makes Us. We've got it because of other supports that we have. So our goal, and we're really close to being able to do this now, is to give every middle school student an opportunity to learn how to play music, to be in other music programs, to be in arts programs, to be in athletic programs, to be in other clubs and activities. And that comes as a part of the Bailey culture. And we need to promote that and understand that middle school students are adolescents. They need opportunities to explore, and it's not just a science department.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
And I guess this isn't directly for Dr. Register, more for the group. So when we, as a committee, started talking about pathway changes months ago, I think in that meeting and then in subsequent meetings, there was always a discussion about we want to make sure what we're doing is not just rearranging the chairs, right? That we don't just sort of leave it at that. And so I think it's a good discussion, and I think there have been some good ideas about expanding what works at East and taking advantage of all the rebirth and growth that's going on in Stratford, and I think that's great. But, you know, I look at these pathway scenarios, and I see Schwab, Tom Joy, Hattie Cotton, Graymar, Warner, Maplewood. Those are all bottom 25% schools. We've got Inglewood that we have. There's been some support there, and there's a plan there. We got Jerry Baxter, Miriam is at, and she's just gotten her feet on the ground, and so she's got to have some time. But my concern, I guess, is that a big piece has got to be an intense focus on turning around these schools and giving the schools the support that they need to become top performing schools, because I take the point from John and from everybody else and educators here this ad nauseum that making things work takes time. You can't do a new thing every single year and expect it to work, and I get that. But when you hear it takes time and we got to take our time, there are thousands of kids every year that don't have the time for us to take. You know, they're graduating and they're not going to college, or they're, reading 2, 3, 4 grade levels behind. I mean, we started this whole process, Dr. Register, when he announced it back in the fall, was sense of urgency. And we fought about, do we do this fast or do we take our time? How fast do we go? And it's a balance. But I get a little worried that we have spent so much time talking about moving Bailey to a new building and moving east around and building a pathway, and that's fine, but what about the other stuff? What about the intense supports that you need at schools? And we have some kind of broad statements about it. But
we my thought, we have lost sight of page 2. I think the pathways, I personally like some of the changes. I think we need to recommend page 2 also. I've been saying that the last few weeks. We got a little focus on this, and we need to, because it's important. And I think there could be some good results from them. And we have said all along, though, we don't want to just shuffle the deck chairs. It can't be just that. And so that's why, yes, we had the turnaround recommendations as well. And I certainly want to make sure we recommend those if we were all in agreement. Hopefully you guys have kind of read them and studied them and want to add to them or whatever. I don't know. I don't want to walk away from the pathways discussion either. I just want to say, we need to focus on that too.
Yeah, but let me respond to you specifically. The pathways is only one piece of a much more comprehensive and broader strategy that was started back in September. We've already made leadership changes in schools, and we've already brought principals on. We recruited nationally, and we've got some top-notch people coming into a number of these schools. We've done our recruitment for teachers, and our new leaders, or the leaders who we've had confidence in, who are in place, will have opportunities to select new leaders. And we've made decisions about quality of staff. We've made decisions about Jerry Baxter. We've made decisions about Bailey, Stratford, not Stratford because it's not on the list, but we've got a program in place there. So the urgency, and 90% of the decisions are made and are being implemented. And we've put, I don't know how much money into extra resources into these schools back in the fall and beginning now. We just approved a budget last night that has a weighted student funding formula that will mean an increase in resources again to a number of these schools if Metro Council commercial approves it. And it's not a heavy list. It's a reasonable lift. It's a reasonable budget. But we've made a lot of those turnaround decisions already and are putting other plans in place. So the pathways thing is just one piece of that. It doesn't have to happen. I personally think it's a good change, a good approach. I don't think it damages neighborhood schools, which are primarily elementary schools. It won't change any of those zones. It won't push anybody away. It won't steal any elementary kids. There are no recruitment efforts other than charter schools. There aren't any recruitment efforts to take kids out of neighborhood schools and send them to another school somewhere else. The pathways thing's a middle school and high school thing. And it addresses a couple of basic concerns. One, East is desirable. More people want to go to East. Moving Bailey is a way to increase, and putting middle school at East at Bailey is a way to increase seats that are desirable. Putting Bailey at Stratford, just bottom line, is a way to protect Bailey.
My thought behind it too was
And
something
and
innovative.
those are two
you
good
know.
things to do.
My one comment, on the Bailey thing, I'm not saying it's the greatest idea. When we first started discussing it, was that trying something innovative. We've had Bailey on the list for a long while. Is it worth trying something innovative? Is that a good idea to try this? I've heard about these 5 through 12 schools. I don't know the 5th grader with the 12th grader and all that thing. I trust our leaders like Mr. Steele that they can handle that. So, to me, that wasn't the big concern, but we definitely heard that concern. But is it worth trying something innovative? And again, knowing that the deck chairs are not going to fix it all, we got to have all this other stuff too,
So I just want to know, I made a list early on, and I'm kind of parceling these out, but there are certain, to my understanding, there are certain sort of levers you can pull when you're trying to do school reform. You can do leadership. That's a big one. Get the right leader in there. You can do teachers, so high quality teachers or really high quality professional development. You find the teachers that need a mentor, you do a mentorship program, you do both, right? Wraparound services, we talked a lot about, which I do want to flag for later because I have a question about how that's going to happen. Community involvement, and sort of broader staffing issues. And so I just would like to have a little bit of clarity on what actually is going to happen. Is it that, because what I worry is that we talk about staffing, we talk about leaders, and so what'll end up happening is you put in a new principal and you say, all right, now you get an extra 1 or 2 people. And okay, we've committed resources to the school, but is that really enough to take a school that's, is testing in the bottom 5% in the state? Is that going to be enough to really push and drive a culture change and to turn a school around? Or is it just going to be kind of a gesture in the right direction, but not the tidal wave of support that you need?
I don't think, I'm going to just say this, I don't think that's an MMPS issue because they're putting all of these processes and procedures and policies in place, all of these plans in place. However, I think that is a community issue in which you're going to have to get behind the school and say, okay, I'm willing to get into the school. I'm willing to send my child to the school to help because, if you are 2 college-educated parents and you decide I don't want to send my child to a red school, well, the school probably, that's one of the issues is that as a community, we want changes, but we want them to do all the changes, and we don't do any changes. We just remain where we are and continue doing what we're doing, and hopefully it'll change, and then we'll choose to do that. We'll choose to be a part of it, and that's where you see problems. It's kind of like John says, before Stratford was Stratford, the STEM school, with, hundreds of people on their Facebook page. It was just a group of parents that said, we're going to come to the school that's in our neighborhood. Before it changed, before MMPS implemented all of these things and, Metro Council decided we're going to put, millions of dollars into a building renovation. I think that it's a community thing, and that's really where we are. I think the community engagement part, not on the piece of like community achieves or community PTO, just regular community people who have children in the system saying, I'm willing to do this, I'm willing to band together.
Personal accountability, from the neighbors.
The problem is that, and I'm sorry, you want to talk? Yeah. I'll be quick. I don't disagree at all, and I'm all about community involvement and engagement. That's my thing. That is a slow theory of change. That is we're going to build over time and we're going to get people involved, and it is the only way to do lasting permanent change. Totally agree with you.
So I can tell you, implementing, just for us, we've already started the implementation, planning for next year. So having community achieves, I've met with student services yesterday. Everyone to talk about the chronic absenteeism. That's an issue with us. Discipline. We have a plan, and we have a plan in place, and we started working on that yesterday. That will carry through some training with teachers this summer. The other part that you talked about, staffing, I just had a meeting, and we talked about moving teachers who are not appropriate for, the change that needs to occur are moving forward, and what's the best place for them, and Jared Baxter isn't, quite frankly. And I've already hired most of the staff that will come back to Jared Baxter next year or come from. I have teachers from IT Crestwell, MLK, who have applied to come to Jared Baxter. So I already know that I'm building a strong team, even with like the teachers that I have that are there. But the teachers that are coming in are just as strong and just as driven to make sure that what needs to happen works for the students there, and that they continue with the improvement plan. So those are in place.
I'm sorry, I just want to make one comment. There, I listened to my coach today talking to a kid, and he said if we win the state championship, that'll last about 2 weeks. We'll get to brag about that for about 2 weeks, and then we're going to start preparing for the next year. I've been here 5 years. I heard a parent make a comment the other night at the Bailey meeting, and I didn't say anything. I left, but the comment was that the decisions have already been made and whatnot. I've been here 5 years, and I have never been turned down by my leadership for any support that I've needed for this school. They went to battle for a $20 million renovation we're in. They went to battle for a $3 million. By the way, as the budget's too high for the track right now, we got to go back to the drawing board a little bit, Anthony, but thank you for your support on that. A new track out there. We got leaders in the meeting right now that this was one of the lowest performing, dangerous schools in Tennessee, and they decided to put all that grant money into this school because they had the vision, the leadership to know that this school, this struggling school, could perform well with all the things that you mentioned, with the professional development, the right teachers. And right now we have probably a 93% teacher retention. I think Christian probably is higher than that at these schools. So I want to make sure that everybody's clear, for the record, that my leadership, and I think you guys know me well enough to know now, I'm not going to tell you what I don't think. My leadership has been phenomenal in their support of these students and East Nashville and Stratford High School. I think Christian will speak to the same, and I know Mr. Ball will speak to the same. So sometimes we have to be reminded of how blessed we are with the leadership that we have in place, because it's not always like that in other districts.
So I often tell the story about the first time I visited McGavock High School, and 2 weeks later, 2 weeks after I came to this district, I changed the leadership at McGavock High School. I could tell that same story about Stratford. This place was in crisis, and you start with leadership and then you build it. So it is not slow change. I disagree with that. It is not slow change. Now, every one of the principals in this room are new. Every one of them has been changed. Every one of them has been brought in, and I have confidence in them. Step one, and it is turning around. What comes much later is the change in public perception, and we have to build that. Now, in the short term, we've got some crises we're dealing with. Bailey's a red school. It's, I have great expectations for test scores this year at Bailey. I think they're going up. I think they have things in place. And I hope that happens, but the public perception is lagging far behind that, and we're losing kids there. So now let me go to the other piece. And I said this in my speech this morning. Kirkpatrick is a school that has really close to the highest per pupil expenditure of any elementary school in the district. And I've put the best leadership I could put in there, and it hadn't worked. And so we made a tough decision. We're converting it to a KIPP school. And I think that strategy is going to work. And it's not going to work just because of KIPP, but it's going to work because of KIPP and the partnership with MNPS and Mildred Nelson and Amy, and I can't remember her last name, who's the leader, Galloway, who's the principal at KIPP. And it's going to work because children who go to Kirkpatrick are going to have some other choices starting next year. Some of those children are going to Laughlin because we're providing transportation. So we have to look, we have to make some hard decisions like that too. But this East Nashville, let me tell you, pathways and moving seats is just one little piece of a much more comprehensive strategy to change what's happening in East Nashville. Maplewood High School 5 years ago was 200 students less than it is today. The enrollment at Maplewood's going up. We've got the right leadership there. We're pulling in a faculty. And those are the basics that we have to do. Great leaders and great teachers, first and second, two-step process, and you build the program. But what else does it take? What else can we do to respond to community need in East Nashville? And that community need is not just restricted to 1 or 2 elementary schools and 1 or 2 middle schools. We need to look bigger picture at what does it take to keep pushing it forward in East Nashville. And I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree, and I think John raised some.
Christian needs to say something.
Please do. And John, you raised some great points about the turnaround strategies that we need to be doing, and a lot of these you are doing, and so we're recommending maybe a few more. Go ahead, Christian.
I just want to. I think you're asking a key question. What is the innovation occurring? What is the turnaround strategy? And one of the pieces I want to emphasize is as you look at this transition, really take a magnifying glass to the innovation in teacher talent that is occurring at Bailey. It is irrefutable that the human capital at Bailey has been completely overhauled. And now Bailey has some of Tennessee's top performing teachers. This year, we worked with the Innovation Zone through Dr. Coverstone's office to build what we call an opportunity culture, which was an aggressive attempt to completely redesign our way of attracting top talent in teaching to our school. And now, because we have really focused on teacher leadership as a key turnaround strategy, because you have to have great teachers and support them along the way if you're going to build a great school, because we have great kids. That's we all agree on that. But a key turnaround strategy that we employed, and this is our 3rd year now working, and that began in year 2, really recruiting some of the top talent in this state to Bailey, was to build this culture and system for teacher leadership. And now when you look at the teacher profile at Bailey, I would argue you have some of the best teachers in Nashville, Tennessee. And that is supported by the data from the test scores, their observation scores, and the fact that the state of Tennessee even gave them an incentive, a signing bonus to come to Bailey. So as you make this transition, those top teachers are going to be listening really closely to, is this teacher leadership model going to continue? Because that innovation strategy for turnaround is working. And the data supports that completely.
Christian, how do you feel about the potential move and bringing your top brass with you? What are your thoughts and your take on it since you're here?
I definitely see the long-term promise of this. I think the enrollment challenge is something that we look at as the baseline. If the Bailey enrollment, the pathway as it currently exists, is going to, in the next 5 years, diminish significantly, then we're faced with a new decision. And my leadership team and I, we got together and we really looked at this and we said, Bailey is not defined by the walls in which we work. It's defined by the community, the people, the work that we're doing. So if we move, and most especially the children in the building, they will be moving. If we move together and we capitalize upon what's working, we really ensure that what is working migrates with this change, and we double down on what's not working, because we can't dismiss the fact there's still a lot of work to do in turnaround. Then we can really grow something promising. That has been done in places like Akron, Ohio, with the National Inventors Hall of Fame campus, where you have a middle school and a high school STEM school that really build this strong pathway. We shore up the connections with Stratford. We built this Day of Discovery program. We've built a lot. We've tried to capitalize on what it is to be a STEM school across the 512. If we as a community commit to it, I believe firmly we can do it well. But in order to do it well, we have to look into the short-term transition, making sure that what is working for the Bailey kids does transfer in this change, and then doubling down on the areas that still must succeed.
And I'll say that we need to make sure that the conversation about Bailey moving is about the under enrollment, and that's the focus, because we don't want to say Bailey failed, so they're moving. I mean, we need to stop talking about Bailey as a target red, because again, we will get off that list this year with our test scores. We need to start thinking about messaging it as under enrollment as the reason.
I'm really glad you said that.
That's a great
about
thought.
getting off the list this year.
Enrollment.
I wish the scores had come before I retire, but I don't think they're going to.
If enrollment were to continue to decline, even if it moves, long-term, what does that mean for Stratford? If you only have a middle school of, 100, 200 kids, do you rezone and just make Stratford just a high school again?
No, you can. Well, so you work to the total enrollment, and you've got much more flexibility if you have grades 5 through 12 and a faculty of 75 teachers, as opposed to a 5 through 8 building with only a faculty not able to offer a full curriculum. Right. But I think the enrollment will go down, but I don't think it'll be an immediate hit. But I think the possibility for building it back up will depend on the program and the cell and the community, because there are a lot of kids in East Nashville that leave East Nashville to go to school. And one of the things that we want to do is get those kids back in these schools. And what I've said, and Christian knows, I've said this to Christian several times, Bailey is an uphill climb. It's got a perception that's been there for decades, and it's an uphill climb. And so the change would be good for changing that perception. I think it's a positive move.
To me, I was going to say, to me, like when I thought about when we first brought it up, the small enrollment was an attractive thing to start, because like a really focused middle school inside of a school, and of course, once the success is there and the marketing is there, just up. But that was my thought. But go ahead.
So 250 students for 4 grades, 300 students for 4 grades is pretty small. But when you put it together in a larger place, you have the infrastructure. Right. You can develop the infrastructure.
So what do you do then if it grows and becomes more popular?
When it grows, you add teachers. Okay. Teachers follow kids, and teachers go away when kids go away. And so, that's the big thing. We don't have any schools that have, we have isolated crowded classrooms just because of scheduling and things like that, but we put teachers where the kids are.
Well, I hope Stratford gets overcrowded.
Well, if this happens, let's say it's 300, it'll be about 1,000. So the capacity of the building is probably 1,400. So we still have 300 or 400 to go to continue building the high school and the middle school. So that would take time. But that would be a great problem if we had to build a new wing or
6-year-olds here.
That's a great problem to have. Keep in mind, folks, I'm getting numerous calls every single day. I got a call from Chattanooga last week thinking about coming over to Stratford from Chattanooga. So it's going to keep growing, but growing 300 or 400, and the capacity is probably 1,400. That's going to take a while.
I have a question about KIP real quick. Not KIP, Kirkpatrick. Just really quick question.
Is that a new name?
Yeah, it should be.
Just has a good ring.
Okay, and I'm not trying to be antagonistic. Please, I really just want to know the answer. Okay, because I've heard things are like with the mobility at Kirkpatrick right now. So will KIP take kids during the year, being that they are now the zone school?
They have to.
They have to.
Okay. For kids who, because they have an option with transportation if they don't want to go there, to go to Rosebank with transportation. For kids who do that, will there be some kind of like exit interview or counseling for the parents to make sure they're not being counseled out?
Yeah, the thing, absolutely. And, we've heard that before, and I don't buy completely into that. Our problem is mobility. Our problem is mobility. It's the fact that people move and children move and they get bounced around. And, and the one point that I think I didn't express well back in the fall, I'm sorry for that, but what I want to do is cut mobility. So if an Englewood parent moves out of the Englewood community, if an Englewood parent moves to Tom Joy, it would be nice for that Englewood child to be able to stay at Englewood. Because we know the more kids are in place, the longer they're in place, the more successful they'll be.
Right.
When they move, the other side of that is every time they move, they've got to start over. It's a struggle. And when you move 5 or 6 times during a school year,
Yeah.
you don't have much chance for success.
Is that the pattern, that people are leaving one part of East Nashville and moving to another? The kids are
And they're
going
moving,
from Jerry
and
Baxter
a
to-
big thing that we're seeing now is that they're moving to Madison. And so there's Fred back there. And so what I've what I've said to Fred is, look, Fred, this geography is so compact. Can't we do something else with transportation so that if a parent has to move because of rent, that there's a possibility that they can stay in the same school. And we have that, that's a policy now. We just can't provide the transportation. But I think we need to look at that. We need to see what that problem looks like, and we can build on that in the future. One other thing about the decision now, when with Christian and Michael sitting down there, here's the urgency for the decision. Is that we're talking about a decision that's going to affect the 17 school year. It's over a year away, and you need that much time to get it done right. And John, you need that much time to build that community around it. For the two of them to work together to do that, we don't need to do it until we need plenty of time to do that. If you delay it now, then you're not talking about 17. You're talking about 18. And that's a long time down the road, and that's slow change. Back to what John was saying, that's slow change. And so it's time to make a decision. We can do the pathway thing, or we don't have to. I mean, I'll just call it like it is.
Are there any other recommendations
Christian.
though for the pathway option? Like, is
I would
it?
just say that East, people aren't concerned, East is the same campus 5 through 12. I know they're different schools.
Yeah.
The same campus, there isn't a concern about the fear of putting fifth graders there. So
Right.
if it works there, I think it could work. I don't think that should be the reason we don't do it.
I think there is a concern for some parents, and that's
Yeah,
why they
there-
don't choose it.
Yeah.
There is.
Sure.
But I don't think that's the only reason. I think, part of the other reason is that you kind of give the high school campus, the middle school that moves in there, when the other middle school feeds in there, you've got another middle school that's already had 4 years of ownership too. And that's
Oh,
maybe
for
a
Lynn.
little
A lot
more
of it's the
emotional.
parents. Majority of the kids know each other. And if you look at our generation, like with me having 8 kids, it's large families. And so they're used to having older siblings. It's just parents who maybe have only one child or maybe 2. And it's like, okay, I'm not too sure about this, and it's a whole new thing, and they're just kind of apprehensive about it. But at East, being a product of East, it's wonderful. The culture there is great, which is one of the reasons why they're concerned about moving the middle school over to Bailey. And there are some shared resources there, and that's what I want to question, what will happen with the staffing there. Because even with their band and with their physical education, it's shared. And so will those teachers be shuttled back and forth to both campuses? Will you hire new staff?
So the staffing will come, if there's a need for additional staffing, it'll come. I don't know what the administrative staff's like. There might be sufficient now for operating on 2 campuses. If you got to have another music teacher, you got to have another music teacher. We are not strapped for being able to hire the staff that we need. The issue there is just exactly the opposite. It's growing. It's not shrinking. When it grows, you can support the staff and the infrastructure to do that.
Yeah, that's
We were, one of the concerns that we heard from a lot of parents at the meeting at East the other night was about the convenience and the drop-off and the thing like that. And we have kids, we have a lot of kids at East who ride MTA bus service. So Fred worked with folks in MTA and looked at what happens at Bailey with MTA and what happens at East with MTA and what we can do with our yellow school buses. And we say to parents, your kids need to be at East 15 minutes early, and we've got a shuttle bus that'll have them at Bailey by the time school starts. And we run that back and forth. And it's easy. It's not that hard to do, right, Fred?
Yeah, I think you guys answered that concern pretty well.
Add something. I'm looking right now at the movement distribution data that was pulled earlier this year. And just speaking from Bailey's point of view, I think we really need to go back to those numbers and look at, is the movement really within East Nashville? Because I'm looking at the data and it's not, as far as Bailey is concerned. So I think we need to go back and look at that and make sure that that's accurate.
But I think it's happening, according to the data that I got from Chris, it's happening before they even get to Bailey. So it may not happen within Bailey. What happens is if they move, let's say Kirkpatrick, they're there for kindergarten and first grade. Then they move, then they come back for third grade. Then they move again, in fourth grade, but they come back in the middle of fourth grade year. Okay, but then they don't even make it to Bailey for fifth grade. They move away, but they come back to Bailey for seventh. So they didn't even get on your list as an enrollment for fifth grade.
Okay.
So they didn't even count as that primary entrance into yours, and that kind of mobility is proper. I mean, it really is problematic. It makes it an issue with trying to figure out, trying to project. When Chris is trying to project, numbers, and we're not sure how many of our fourth graders are going to actually be even in the zone. They're even going to be in this area. They say they're going to be in the area, and they go on the list, but then, that first day nobody comes to school. They don't show up because they moved over the summer, or whatever the case may be. I think that's part of, and I think some of it is in the areas like Stratford. Okay, a lot of people in the Stratford geographic area aren't moving. They purchased a house, they've been living in that home for 20, 30 years. They're not moving around as much. I'm not saying they don't ever move, but they're not moving around as much as the students on the other end of the spectrum, like Warner and Kirkpatrick. I know I've seen 10 students from Warner come and go in the last, few months. They moved to Gallatin, they came back. They moved to Madison, they came back.
And a lot of it is not there actually physically moving. A lot of times with that, you have people who use their relative's address in that area and they're looking for another school. So that child could still be living at 123 Sesame Street, but they're going to say, well, hey, I have an aunt that lives in Gallatin and that school system is better. We're going to try that. Well, this isn't working, so let's go back into,
I think some of it is
that
some of it is legitimately I can't do this, or somebody was incarcerated, or whatever the case may be. We don't know what all of the reasons are behind it, but I think to look at it in the bigger picture, that hopefully if you put enough students together, it doesn't matter where you move, this will still be in the area in which you can go to school and you can get there.
Right.
That concept,
I think Christian, yeah, you and then Christian, yeah.
All right, well, so this is the last thing I'll say. This is a great discussion. This is y'all are raising a lot of questions, and the community meetings raised a lot of questions, and the point I want to make now is, if you make a decision now, you're talking about year after next, and the people sitting around this table need to stay together and look at all the details and all the questions that you're raising. And it's not when the school board votes one way or the other, or when we make a recommendation one way or the other, that's just a beginning. It is not the end. And so there is an opportunity here. Now, believe it or not, one of the great things that happened this year is that East Nashville, I believe this, East Nashville came alive. It did. And I take credit for that. But this is important because I hadn't been able to get anybody's attention. Maybe I wasn't trying the right way. But now you've got East Nashville's attention, okay? And so take it forward, make it work. And you got over a year to do it if you do it now. If you don't do it now, you're going to have to. You're stuck with this model through another 2 years because you cannot do it in a short term.
The work starts after we do something.
We're MMPS's biggest cheerleaders, but we're the biggest thorn in your sides too.
Both simultaneously.
All you got to do is just listen to me.
Like Christian wanted to say something, and obviously.
I'm sorry, Dr. Register, to come after you, not to have the last word, but one advisement here that is coming just from the field at Bailey is I would urge some decisive action.
Yes.
Because it's impacting our ability, it is impacting our ability to boldly move forward. And some just quick little stories, recruiting. We found a rock star to recruit nationally. And she fell in love with the leadership team, everything. At this point, she heard about the instability in the year after next. And we can't give those answers. The second, I have had another teacher and another aspiring teacher transfer out, loving the school, wanting to stay, but not clear on, because if enrollment changes, could personnel change? So we do need to make, I would urge some decisive action so that we can boldly move forward. And we don't lose what is working and gaining traction in the process. And a lot of that is people who are involved.
And it has
and
been
the kids.
Yes, and it has been distracting to everybody, teachers and students in both schools. So yeah, well said, Christian. I totally echo Christian. Please come together tonight with a recommendation, because it's been enough time, I think. Please come together tonight so we can move on. This is interrupted instructional time. It's interrupted a lot of people's lives. But I want to say this, because this is probably the last meeting. You guys are awesome for just putting this together and meeting so much. And this is what is necessary. This kind of caring body, this kind of caring community that's going to change every child's future. So I just want to say thank you for doing that. I know it's tough.
And thank you guys for being here. Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Therese.
Can we, and we're looking at time, and just to be mindful of time, is there anyone here who has a clear change in the recommendation, something that you would like to present as a change in the recommendation as it stands right now?
I just had a kind of an addition, and it was a question for maybe Dr. Register. It's kind of a central office question. So a lot of the turnaround strategies that we're recommending and that the district is doing are specific things. So hiring more staff, or changing the leader, or whatever all the changes are.
All that stuff. Yeah.
Is there a mechanism that the district is going to use to do program evaluation to see what's working? So to look at, okay, we've made this change, this change, this change, this change, and this change. We're 1 year in. Is it working? A. B, if it is working, what are the levers that we pulled that are having the most impact? What do we need to change?
That has gone through the last 3 years of transformation, I'll tell you, there is constant evaluation on what happens. It's constant.
The accountability system is really, it really is. One of the concerns I've had is, and about Bailey, is that the state told us 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now, almost 3 years ago now, that we would have 3 years to turn schools around. And we only had 2. They changed the rule. And that's a real concern. I'm really interested to see what happens to Bailey scores this year, because this is the 3rd year of turnaround. Now, they used 3 years of test data, but they backed up. So that means we only had 2. Same thing for the other schools. But the schools that have been on the list, we've only, we've really only been under the system 2 years. Now the problem with the new schools on the list is they were downward projected, if you will. But it's so, and I don't think, and I think we've taken some very aggressive steps this year, and they have to be measured, and we have to hold them accountable. Yeah. We're holding these people accountable for what's happening in Gary back. It was in a downward trajectory, but I think it's turned.
So John, are you asking for, because I'm going to think that maybe we can ask for the communications department, like Janelle Lacey, to maybe offer us every so often, just as an advisory committee, or even as PAC or
down
whatever.
to the PACs, yeah.
Offer some sort of information about how it's going, how the program is working. Maybe that can be.
And I actually would like, and I want to recognize Lisa Kim too. I would like if the school board approves it, I would like, especially our 2 members, to hold these changes to happening.
And frankly, it's not that I know that Paul Changos and we have the data department and they're doing a lot of this work. It's partially I just want people to be able to understand that we are disentangling. We're doing a lot of stuff, and so I don't want Jared and Julie to be held accountable for we threw a whole bunch of crap at the wall, and the accountability is we're just going to look at their test scores.
needs to be, and I hope it is more subtle than that, that we're actually disentangling what caused this change, because that's the problem, is that if you throw a bunch of stuff at the wall, but you can't keep track or have any way of figuring out what's working or not working, you don't know what to fix. So I just want to understand.
So, you know, the key there is what kind of leadership team you have at the school. It's the leader, and it's the quality of teachers you have in the building. They're great teachers.
Oh, I know.
These people are high performers. And we've got leaders now. We've got leaders in these schools that can pull it together. And they need to look at that accountability, and we can provide that. And, you know, what I propose going forward is that y'all, I'm going to be done. I'll stay together. I mean, you know, so you need to plan. Ask that. Michael, what do you think?
I think that would be a great idea.
Yeah.
I have an addition. It's probably not going to be super popular. Is that we are saturated with charters, and every new one we add in East Nashville destabilizes us a little bit more. I'd recommend the next few years any new addition. Now, I'm not talking about adding grades to East End, adding grades to Liberty, like existing charters that might add grades. I'm talking about like bringing new charters over here. Because from what I'm seeing on the wait list data that Chris gave us a few months ago, there aren't any like long wait lists in any of them that they have right now. So it's not, I mean, but we do have wait lists at
Right.
choices.
I mean, I appreciate I actually don't want to add any schools to East. I think we need to fill up our schools as it is, and so I don't want to necessarily launch into a big charter discussion, but you know, maybe we're not recommending adding any schools as it is. So
I have an addition as well.
Yeah, sure.
Just going back to what John was saying earlier, looking at the Maplewood cluster and just revisit it and what we're doing there, what's happening there, and how we're focusing on instructional accountability, and you know, like we don't have the pathways, but we have the alignment. Like what else is needed to make sure that this cluster is supported.
Yeah. So you're making a recommendation that we revisit it and evaluate, you know, and that would happen in the PACs, I guess, as we continue on. But we can make that recommendation for sure. I agree. I think we shortchanged the Maplewood cluster a little bit for time's sake, but we should recommend that.
I have a quick question. I know that we are recommending that Warner turns to a Padea. Does that take away their enhanced option? Because as it stands, their parents are happy with the enhanced option. Okay.
That's longer school day.
Yeah,
enhanced option at Warner, would it be taken away
If they become Padea.
If
they're Padea?
The enhanced option is going to stay. However, principals are being given some autonomy about how to use those resources. So, for example, this is just an example, they may choose to go back to a regular day but hire additional staff. So the resources going to the school will be the same. How they choose to use it is up to the principal. It may be different.
Can I also add one more small thing? Because we started this at the beginning of the year with, and I'm very happy that it seems like the district's doing a lot better in terms of communication and reaching out to parents and those kinds of things. So I would like to add under community engagement, periodic sort of parent and community surveys at these schools to see. We've got our own data about how things are going. We hear it from the principals, but you need to hear it from the parents and community members too. So I think adding periodic surveys to get that feedback. I know we have sort of a mishmash of that stuff going on, but I think that's got to be a key part.
So, yeah, for additions, we're talking about revisiting the Maplewood cluster through the PAC system. Potentially we're not recommending new schools in East Nashville.
You don't have to label what like just no news.
Right, and yeah, utilize the assets we have in periodic parent and community surveys. What, did I miss any like new?
Are we going to segue the advisory committee meetings to our PAC meetings from this point forward? Are we
You have to be a Metro parent to be a PAC?
No, you can just, well, technically, yes, you should be.
How about empower the
That's a-
PACs a little more?
I mean, that's a concern if we're talking about broader, Anthony's not a Metro parent, I'm not a Metro parent
Can we
yet.
modify, who has the authority to
2019.
modify?
No,
PAC?
I'm looking forward to it, but not
Do
there.
we have the authority to modify the PAC?
Well, so the way PAC works is the core is a fairly small group, some representatives from each cluster, but the meetings are open.
Yes.
And, if y'all use community PTA is your organization if you want to build on that, or just come to PAC. It's what y'all want to do to be organized. But I think, through the course of this year, there's been some good discussion here, and y'all need to build on that and capitalize on it.
Yeah, I definitely want to recommend we continue the discussions in PAC,
East Nashville,
but
PTA, or-
at the very least,
I don't know how to do that. I don't know what y'all want to do, but I would pick some way to organize.
which I thought we talked about in previous,
Yeah, we
as
would
an
have-
idea.
I think, it kind of goes back to marketing. Make sure that people are aware that the cluster PAC meetings are open to the public. Although it's only, they don't even know this part, they will. The representatives of the schools are the voting body within. But the meetings themselves, that's what they're there for. The Stratford Cluster PAC has increased activity this year over last year for certain.
And I think that, my only concern there is that there was a real deliberate effort when we created this to be parents, but also teachers and principals and community members who don't have kids.
Right.
And I feel like that's best practices in terms of,
So a PACC.
yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
I think that- I think
And
that-
PACs are open and to other people,
And I
right?
think that may come with and I think
Yeah.
this is not a school board thing, like this is not something you do
Yeah,
with the
I
school
agree.
board.
Right.
But
I
this
agree
is
with
something we
that.
can actually
Yeah.
come in PS about, Janelle Lacey at our last directors PAC meeting talked about the hierarchy of communication and how they present information. Maybe the PAC can be in the middle of that hierarchy of communication and information is disseminated to the PAC before it gets to the media or before it gets to another group of people. So people are encouraged to come to the PAC meeting and know that I'm going to get firsthand information from the PAC meeting. It's not going to be, okay, I'm getting secondhand information from Channel 5 or whatever.
Right, sure.
You know that this is information that's previous to us, or it comes straight from the district in this particular order, which I think may help, but that's not a school board issue that we need to talk about to them in the next few weeks.
With those additions, are we comfortable with me presenting these to the school board? I guess is the bottom line question.
Is everybody clear on them? It's Bailey and East, the Bailey and East Magnet transition. It's Warner Padilla. It's also, I didn't know if Inglewood was interested in a STEM or STEAM.
The STEAM, what the
STEAM.
Inglewood parents.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, with a new principal in place, it's hard to say that the interest would be the same as it was in the fall.
And
possibly modify what we've got to emphasize programming or targeted programming more than
And
the actual program.
If you want to email, let you digest it a little more, I trust you, and I think the group would trust you to kind of refine the Inglewood exact recommendation and just email that out to us. And I'll nail that down before the school board meeting, but.
And we may need to maybe, as a group, nail down a time to come back and talk about the Maplewood cluster, because I think that's imperative that we give them just as much attention as we gave them.
I would think we would need to honestly maybe do a different, like a reformation of that, but with mainly Maplewood cluster people.
Is there there's a Maplewood PAC, right? Yeah. So, try to get some commitments to go and get some other, that side of Gallatin and that cluster
To some
community
extent,
people.
there's look, bottom line is we're making recommendations and that's good,
But if we're going to make any of these stick, there's going to have to be some accountability from this group
us.
or something
Yes.
very close to it.
Yeah,
And
sure.
So there's going to need to be some sort of future something where we have folks from the district and we say, all right, we made this recommendation. What do we do?
Yep.
We made this one. What's happening?
We can work on
I agree. And maybe just the meeting setting is the pack, something like that. But yeah, you're exactly right. And we need our school board members to hold the district accountable. I mean, they're here hearing it, and they're going to be getting it in that meeting, so.
Should that actually be a recommendation that,
I think
a
maybe it
year
should.
from now,
Yeah,
18 months, whatever?
Yeah.
yeah.
And this will be the first board meeting in May, be May 12th. And Councilman Davis and Bruce will present. And I would love for y'all to be there if you can. It's always 5 o'clock in the morning. And just thank y'all so much for your service. As a gift to y'all for long hours. You can take anything.
Yay. I just want to, I want to say thanks to the group. I know there's so many things you could be doing. It's a lot of hard work that we put into this and a lot of brain power. So thank you all for your opinions and sharing.
Councilman, would you say, Ms. Kim, would you like to make any comments?
Yeah. Lisa, I did recognize her. I slipped in a recognition earlier, but how are you? Anything, or Jill?
Oh, you said it wonderfully, Anthony. I appreciate all of your investment, and I know this is an additional lift on top of day jobs and rigorous other activities, so thank you.
Thanks as well.
I want to thank all of them for staying with it.
Thanks to the and the Channel 3 folks for always being here, and yeah, we appreciate the long nights, and to the MNPS staff and teachers and administrators. Thank you.
I think it's good.
We're adjourned.